It's not, I don't believe it's laid out. I think it's literally just that was in the map accidentally.
All right, I'm going to call to order this June 13th, 2024 meeting of the Lexington Planning Commission at 5 p.m. in the Rockbridge County Administrative Offices. We have all commissioners present save Leslie Strawn. Do we have a look at the agenda? And we need a motion for approval of the agenda if there's not any request to alter it.
I move that we had approved the agenda as presented.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, approval of the minutes from the May 23rd meeting. Do we have, as always, thorough, well done, since I was not here. I was glad to have him because felt like I was here.
It's my favorite thing to do, which is to motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, next is citizens' comments on matters not on the agenda. And we have quite a crowd tonight, but perhaps they're all here for matters on the agenda. Yes, no comments on matters not on the agenda. We shall close that period and move right on to the first of our number of new businesses. And the first is an application by Kelly Wallace of Wells Construction, Inc., requesting approval of a site plan 2024-02 for the construction of a picnic structure at Earth Song Community School located at 227 North Lewis Street, tax map number 25-1-1-3, owned by Catherine Lupto. So we'll start with our staff report, Arnie.
Good evening to everyone. We do have a proposal to construct a shade structure with a wooden framing and a corrugated metal roof to cover the 3 picnic tables existing on the site. The structure will measure 12 by 16 and will be approximately 12 feet in the height. In addition to that, the fire marshals also requested that exterior stairs be covered, and that's the second part of the request. So on the bottom of the first page, you see the location map there, the little mark highlighted in yellow. That's where the existing picnic tables are. And it's easier to see if you flip over the next page, the first photograph there, you have the school building on the left-hand side and 4 parking spaces on the right. And just beyond the short little fence, that's where the picnic tables are located. And you see that a little bit clearer in the second photograph. And the proposal is to put that shade structure over top of those 3 picnic tables. And then the second part of that, which we didn't provide a photograph for you, but on the other side of the structure facing Wills Road is an exterior staircase, and that's the request there. It has been for some time, but now they're doing a construction project, so it's good to add it to their list, is to put a little covering over top of, so when folks are running out in the rain or in inclement weather, then they won't have an issue exiting the building. So it's a 2-part request. The best perhaps is to look at, if you could flip over to page 16, 16 is the drawing showing the picnic pavilion in particular. And the next page shows the actual structure in a little bit more detail. And then finally over on 18, it might be a fold out in your particular handout. That is the site plan that has been modified a few times, but you see the picnic shelter there, and then sort of the lower right-hand corner just beyond the 4 parking spaces. That's all I have for a presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
I have a question about the, on this larger map, the fold out map. It says future fire stair. Are those stairs already there? I thought you said they were already there.
Already there.
So it's just the fire part is the covering?
Correct.
Okay.
The stairs are there and it's just the covering. And sorry, we're utilizing an old drawing and drawing on top of that, and it's no longer future, they're existing.
Thank you.
Other questions for Arnie about details of this?
I have
Question on, I guess it's part of the, report and, where Public Works chimed in and they said, appears to be in close proximity to the private sewer line. Who has not jurisdiction, but who will sort of ratify that or contest that or?
I'm glad you asked that question because one thing that I forgot to mention is we did have one person come by the office and ask that specific question. So the property owner next door, they have a sewer lateral that goes across this property and then exit out Wills Road or somewhere out that way. And they were also concerned. So I made sure, but we have a good construction company. They would call Miss Utility before digging. And all the utilities should be marked. So there shouldn't be an issue hitting that potential or that existing lateral that comes across from the other property.
Good, okay. Any other questions of details or such on the staff report? Okay, so do we have an applicant statement? If you would like to make a statement, you are welcome to. You're not required to. So come on up. Sure, and say your name and address.
Available for questions, if there are any questions. I think the applicant is available for questions.
Okay, so applicants, so we'll just call on you if we have questions that we need answered from you. If you don't have anything to add with Arnie or what's in our packet. Okay, good. All right. So then we open up to public comment before we commence to discussion amongst ourselves. So of the assembled masses, are there any here to comment on this bit of new business? And there is not, so we will close that and see what commissioners have to say. Any thoughts, comments, questions that have just popped into your mind?
I already contacted Arnie with my question, which was about the overhang of the structure, which is into the setback, but it's an allowed intrusion into the setback. So I don't have any other questions about it.
Okay.
I think it meets the setbacks requirements, right, Arnie?
Right.
And there's no increase in program, so to speak. So we're not having additional demand on parking.
Right.
So I think.
Okay. Well, would anyone care to venture a motion?
Right.
I move to approve site plan number SP 2024-02 and find the submitted site plan to be in compliance with the zoning ordinance.
I second.
Any further discussion? No, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, thanks. Good luck. Keep doing the good stuff there.
Yep.
And you're welcome to stay and enjoy the rest of the fun. You know,
But you
don't
have
feel like
to.
you have to, but we would love to have you stay. Okay. All right, we'll move on to our next order of new business, which is a preliminary subdivision 2024-02, an application by Randall Trout proposing a preliminary subdivision plat, boundary line adjustment for parcels located at 438 Lime Kiln Road, tax map number 15-1-17B, and 222 Catalpa Place, tax map number 15-1-17, owned by Jennifer Fuller Spears and Anita Cruz. And we will start with a staff report.
We do have a request for a boundary line adjustment. As you see on the location map, we have the same owners with two pieces of property. One is facing on Lime Kiln Road and the other one's facing off of Catalpa Place. What they're requesting to do, because the Catalpa Place property is quite deep, they would like to adjust that so that rear yard becomes a part of the parcel at 438 Lime Kiln Road. So it's really a boundary line adjustment where you get rid of the one line here and you shift it over to another location, which is seen a little bit better on the survey that's provided on, always up on page 20. So the area that we hatched in is just going from one parcel to the other. as provided in your staff review comments, they still meet the minimum lot size. So the applicant, Randy Trout surveyor, he made sure that the lot that is left along Talpa still meets the minimum 15,000 square foot minimum lot size, just barely, but that's what's being proposed. So it does meet zoning requirements. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Arnie? No, okay. Would the applicant care to make a statement? All right, so if you would come forward, please. So for the record and to the microphone so folks can hear, could you state your
Andy Trout,
and address?
1366 Forge Road.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't necessarily need to make any kind of a statement. I really just am here to answer any questions that you might have, but I think Arnie covered it very well. The whole purpose behind this was, given the nature of the yards out there,
Mhm.
the piece that I'm adjusting into the lime kiln parcel is, that area is to be with the lime kiln house, because that's where the way the yard is. So as it is right now, without the adjustment, there's quite a bit of, it's not very uniform out there. And so it
Mhm.
just works well. And plus too, we had the depth on the lot that came off of the Talbot that allowed us to, it's a small adjustment. It's only like 96 feet.
Mhm.
But it does help with, the use that's out there right now.
Right.
Associated with that. But I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Are there any questions? I think what I didn't realize at first reading is that's the same people own both houses.
It is.
That's why I was wondering if they were selling it to each other. Right, okay. So any,
Oh, no, I understand.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
it's-
that's what I was
it's,
wondering.
They're the heirs of the
yes,
full.
Any questions for our applicant who will be available if you think of any? Don, are you on the verge?
No, no.
Oh, okay.
No.
All right, so if we have any further questions for you, we know where to find you. Over there. Okay, good, thanks. Would there be any public comment on this matter of new business? All right, so come on up, state your name and address for the record and speak into the microphone. Thanks.
Claudette Artwick, 145 Colonnade. Our property has a very tiny corner that meets one of these lots. And my question is just with the additional size of the lime kiln lot when they move the boundary line, is there a plan to construct something there? And also what is possible to be constructed if this is made? Thank you.
Okay, good, thank you. Should we? Yeah. Would you care to answer that? Is there anything? Yeah, just.
We're the owners, Anita Cruz, Jennifer Fuller Spears.
Okay, hi.
And I live at 13 Maple Lane. She lives in 213 Donald. And the answer is no, we don't plan to do anything with the property. We just want it to be more uniform the way Randy drew it up for
Right.
us. That's it.
That's
We
it,
don't plan
okay.
to do anything with it. And what can be built that back there, that's for you all to decide. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Right, right. Okay, good. All right, thanks. Yeah. I think, I mean, if there was someone wanted to build a shed or something that we have the setback regulations for that and that are already in existence. I mean, I don't know. I mean, things can be built, a shed, an accessory dwelling unit. I don't know. Well, I can't think of the, but we have regulations for that. There are regulations on setbacks for anything that would be constructed there. And so that it would fall under the same regulations there are now. And they don't seem to have any other purpose for it. Sure. Yeah. Come on up.
Thank you. With the additional size of the lime kiln lot, could it possibly be subdivided at a later date? And could there be a house built on it?
Right.
I guess. I'm
Okay.
wondering.
Arnie?
If I may, it would be just looking at the survey that's provided, be incredibly difficult to figure out how it would be accessed.
Yeah.
So that would have to be figured out. And we currently don't have that ability to do a second lot off of a flag stem or pipe stem lot
Right.
across the driveway. All lots have to be on a public street, so it would be difficult to figure out how that could
Right.
happen currently.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right, good. Any other public comment on this matter? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Discussion, questions, thoughts, motions?
Does anybody have any comments? No.
Mhm.
I move to approve the preliminary subdivision application PS 2024-02 for the adjustment of boundary lines between 438 Lime Kiln Road, tax map 17-1-17B and 222 Catalpa Place, tax map 17-1-17 in accordance with the boundary line adjustment survey for Marcella D. Fuller, completed by Trout Land Surveying as submitted by the applicant.
I'll second.
All right, motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, good. Very good. Thank you very much. Good luck. Our next order of new business, it's a conditional use permit 2024-02, an application by Rihanna Schlief of Blue Ridge Outdoor School for approval of a conditional use permit allowing a portion of the building located at 123 West Washington Street, tax map number 16-3-C, and owned by Grace Episcopal Church to be used as a daycare center. And we'll start with Arnie, staff report.
Okay, daycare centers are facilities operated for the purpose of providing care, protection, guidance for 13 or more individuals for only part of a 24-hour day, and that's what's being requested here. And again, it's a conditional use permit in the R1 zoning district for that lower level of Grace Episcopal. So if you look at the photograph on page 26, and most of you are probably familiar, but as you drive through that little drive on the left-hand side is the chapel, and the underneath portion is where the daycare is being proposed. And there's the drive through and then around, there's parking in the back, and then you can come back out to the right side of the building in the right-hand portion of the photograph between it and the Hillel Center, our house. So there's a nice little horseshoe-shaped drive for drop-offs. We're only also talking about 13 children with 2 staff. And as I understand, there has been a daycare center there with many more children and presumably staff in the past. We always provide you with your conditions of issuance. So on page 27, your criteria for conditional use permits are listed there with a little bit of staff commentary if needed. And then for conditions, we haven't had a conditional use permit for a while for a daycare center. So these were pulled from some of our educational facilities that we have around town. And the first one, I'm just going to read these in the record because these are the recommended conditions from staff. The first one, the proposed daycare center shall be occupied and used by a maximum of 13 students ages 3 to 6 at any one time. However, in no case shall the number of students be allowed to exceed the maximum occupancy or limits established by all applicable state and local building codes. Please ask any questions as I'm going through. Number 2, the daycare center shall operate primarily between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. with only occasional activities outside of those hours. And I should also have mentioned that the 9 to 3 is proposed by the applicant, as is the number of students, and the age range of 3 to 6 are all proposed by the applicant. Number 3 and 4 are more code requirement issues. Number 3, the building will be at all times be used in full conformance with the current adopted Virginia Unified Statewide Building Code and the current adopted Virginia Statewide Fire Protection Code. Number 4, no change in the design or use of the building shall be undertaken unless such change is in full compliance with the above referenced building and fire codes. It could be argued that 3, 4, and the second half of number 1 are somewhat unnecessary simply because they have to meet those anyway. But sometimes we like to bring forward to make sure that it's abundantly clear what the requirements or conditions are.
Okay, we'll just take.
I have a quick question. So 13, is that due to the size of the property?
No,
13
because
students.
my understanding is they could have many more there. We also had a little bit of a sort of catch in between, in the sense that they didn't even want 13 to begin with. I think they wanted a lower number, but for a conditional use permit starts at 13. So they're asking for 13, even though they may have a number less than that.
We'll just take one of those Bs out of there in number 3.
And maybe
Oh,
some,
eh.
and maybe some commas.
Throw.
Kate, Kate will massage that.
This- Okay, anything more, Arnie?
I do have
Questions? Yeah, sure, yeah.
one more
Yeah.
quick question, and that is, so with the new use, does the fire marshal come and check on things, or?
Their daycare center would definitely be inspected, I think, yearly by the fire marshal. But, definitely also at the beginning, they've had that review, as I understand it. They also have code requirements from the state for daycare centers, from whichever department in the state that happens to be. So they will have overview of those things, and their state code requirements and minimum number of square foot for each child and different groups. So the more kids you have, then you have more requirements for playgrounds and other things. So they will have to meet all of those for this grouping of 13.
Any other questions for Arnie? Okay, we would invite the applicant to make a statement, if the applicant would care to. Okay, is the applicant here in case we have questions? Okay, thank you. All right, so no further statement by the applicant. So public comment on this matter. Is there anybody who would like to say anything about this bit of new business? Okay, we will close that.
I forgot to mention, you have a copy of an email.
Yes,
Yeah.
from,
So that was the one comment that we received in response to the advertisement, the posting,
Right.
and the adjacent notice.
right, good. Okay, so it's time for us to discuss any thoughts on this. Is there any? I mean, I remember when it was Yellow Brick Road, my oldest started there, and so I know that they've had lots of kids in that place. It was a big. Any thoughts? No concerns? No. Does anyone have?
No, I think church basements are perfect places for daycare centers. Yes, I have experience with that. I think the main concern I had, and it's been addressed in here, is the same one that Mary Stewart raised, and that is the fire and safety issue. And I think if that's addressed in compliance, then it's good.
Okay. Well, would anyone like to move this along?
I'll move.
All right.
I move to approve the conditional use permit number CUP 2024-03 for a daycare center at 123 West Washington Street as proposed by the applicant and with staff recommended conditions.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, put it to a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, so that carries with a recommendation. All right, good luck. Yeah, it's great. Okay, we'll move on to number D. And we have a comprehensive plan amendment 2024-01, an application by the city of Lexington requesting amendments to the comprehensive plan opportunity area, future land use commercial center, and traditional neighborhood maps to correct the designations for 8 properties located along the southeast end of Maple Lane. And we will start with a staff report.
On page 43, you see a location map, and outlined in red are the 8 parcels in question. And I'll ask you to flip over to the next page for the future land use map. And again, those 8 parcels are outlined this time in yellow, but you'll notice that the underlying color there is red, which is the commercial center, and also the hatch pattern. Sorry, didn't give you a legend there. That's the opportunity area. So if you follow in the comprehensive plan what a commercial center is and what an opportunity area is, it leads you to believe that you could do a lot more on those 8 parcels and all the other parcels that are red and hatched than currently is allowed or currently exists on those 8 parcels. Those 8 parcels, if you drive down Maple Lane, are all single family houses on the left and the right. So it's an oversight of some sort. Can't point to exactly what happened, but when we updated the comprehensive plan in 2020, somehow these were designated as commercial center and as an opportunity area. And we discovered that, I think, during our plan development mixed use discussion, when we're really focused on the 2 commercial centers along South Main and along East Nelson Street. So what we're trying to do is correct that to take out those 8 parcels out of the commercial center and out of the opportunity area and have them as a future land use designation of traditional neighborhood. And the traditional neighborhood is the designation on the other side of Maple Lane. So everything along Maple Lane would have the same future land use designation of a traditional neighborhood. So we are trying to fix an error, and there's not been a proposal of any sort. Nobody's asking to develop anything. We also received at least 6 phone calls, and I had 1 visitor to come in about this, and rightfully so, because a funny yellow sign shows up on your property. You kind of wonder, what is the city doing? It says zoning action.
Yeah.
So we did, as best we could, respond to those inquiries. And we also have 1 letter or email in support. I think that's in your packet as well. Happy to answer any questions.
Any
I ha-
questions for? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I do have a question on this map. On page, is it on?
44.
44. So the properties in question are are outlined in yellow. There are 2, the what appears to be the back end of 2 properties. Is that, are those all part of 1 parcel? I mean, or each one of those part of a parcel that is in 2 different zoning?
And I think that was intentional because we were trying to square off from the side property line from the firehouse, and realizing that those 2 parcels that face onto South Main Street are incredibly deep. So I think that part at least was intentional to sort of follow that line across the backs of those 2 parcels. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Arnie? Okay, is there any public comment on this? Any residents? Yes, come on forward, please, and give us your name, please, and your address.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? Carrie, H-R-I-G-O-U-L-D, 20 acres. So I think all these people are here.
Okay.
Because they agree it should be residential.
Yeah.
But that parcel that parcel that goes in back, I think that's what everyone is kind of concerned about. And I'm sorry, I didn't get here, so I don't know if it's being red or hatched or.
Probably that one, I'm guessing.
So these are the houses.
Correct. And then that's the one I presume you're talking about. That's in
Yeah,
the middle.
South Main over here.
It is. It loops down this way.
So, right, so that's the cross hatch, right?
Mhm.
So that means that it's still retaining its commercial center designation, is that correct?
Correct.
And how come that hasn't been changed? I think that's what we wanted. How come that hasn't been changed, or can it be changed?
Okay,
And maybe the question for Arnie is, who owns that? What's the use of it currently?
If I may,
Yeah.
answer that. It is currently a vacant parcel in H&C rental, and I do not recall if they're out of Roanoke or BB at the moment. But it's the same company that owns one of the houses that we just talked about that faces on to Maple, that has the really faces on the South Main, has the really deep lot, and they also own that entire hill where Kenny's happens to be. So it's a property owned. That entire ridge, if you will, is owned by somebody out of town.
What I know about, which is all hearsay, is that it's owned by an elderly woman who lives in Richmond. And she has designated the person living at, I don't know. Anyway, he mows it and stuff for it. So it's just a big green area now, which is really nice for, I mean, I'm across the street, but it's still nice. And the people who are on that side of the street, it's really, really nice. And it's the dividing place between the residential houses and commercial stuff
Mm-hmm.
that goes on there. So it's really important. And I think none of us who live on the street would want to see that developed in any way.
Could you please speak into the mic? I'm sorry, just
I'm
thank you.
sorry. I teach, so I run around things. You want me to repeat that?
No.
Do I have to
no.
remember it? Okay. So I guess so the question is, why hasn't that been redesignated, or can it be redesignated, or
Okay.
anybody know?
We were just addressing an issue that we noticed for the houses themselves specifically. So that's why we advertised only for those 8 lots. If there's a recommendation that we go back and also take out that parcel that's in the middle, if everybody's following, sorry, we don't have a pointer, but it's the rectangular shaped parcel that is between the 8 lots in question and the backside of the funeral home and the dentist's office, if everybody's following.
Yes.
Right.
So that was not advertised.
I see.
We would have to go back and re-advertise if that's the recommendation.
Right. Okay. And so there are, and the 2 narrow parts that seem to be connected to the houses they are the same owners as the rest of it.
One of those
One
two.
of those
So the one that's further to the north of those 2 long skinny lots that face on the South Main, that the rear lots are actually in the commercial center. One of those is the same owner as the middle lot that we're primarily talking about. Yes.
And those are lots that are not, they're separate from the residential, those 2 houses that are on Main Street there, right?
Those are lots that are split by the future land use designation. So it's not as though, I'm not sure if this is the question, but we went across the back of those yards.
Okay, that's where their property ends, where it starts to
No.
turn red, that's where those 2 Main Street properties, their backyards end, right?
One
No.
of those houses, it's sort of the backyard of one of the greenhouse, but one of those houses.
It's a long, deep lot.
Yeah.
We cut across parcel, not following a parcel boundary in that sense, and we just cut across the back of the lot.
Right.
So it's not 2 separate.
I see. So,
It's one deep lot
Okay.
that has its 2
That was what I
designations
was
on it.
asking.
okay. Right. We'll have to talk about that to wrap our minds around that. That you can have the same plot can have 2 different. Do we have
Have the
examples
same-
of that elsewhere in the same? I mean, is that
I'll have to think hard about that, but we've also done it with zoning districts, just as an example. So
Mhm.
it is something that is
Okay.
possible.
Okay.
And I can't think of a good example other than to say if you have deep lots, or if you have on a corner lot, you might want residential on one side and
Mhm.
commercial on the other, just because of the type of streets they happen to be.
Right.
So I don't think it's highly unusual.
Okay. All right. So we will be talking about this in our discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there other questions or comments? Okay. Oh, okay. Mr. Nickam, name and address for the record, please.
Dean Nick, 5 Maple Lane. I guess the main question is to you, going back to the title of this map, comprehensive. And what is the meaning of that?
The comprehensive plan is that long-range land use document that was completely revised in 2020 that tells us what should happen in the future on parcels. So if we have a rezoning of a parcel, or if we have a conditional use permit, we look to see what the comprehensive plan sort of foretells for that property.
The comprehensive would mean if somebody came in and bought the house beside the fire company and decided to tear it down, it becomes commercial property. But they'd have to come before that would happen.
It would have to be a rezoning, and depends on what side of the fire company you mean, but so yes, if any property over there is currently zoned residential and they want to change the zoning, we have to follow the comprehensive plan. And if the comprehensive plan says that it is commercial center, then that foretells it going to a commercial use. So we would take that into account when we're rezoning a property. But if the property is requested to go to commercial, but the future land use designation is traditional neighborhood or any of the others, then we would not allow that rezoning to occur because it has a designation of neighborhood.
I guess in my mind, I'm trying to figure out why this map is important.
This map is important, particularly for those 8 properties that we have advertised this evening, in that they are currently have a designation for commercial center and for opportunity area. So if somebody wanted to come in and buy those houses and develop something there, they could request a rezoning to a commercial district such as C2.
Now, you're answering my question now. So I understand taking Maple Lane out makes perfect good sense. But then it brought up the question in my mind, the purpose of the map to start with. And this is just to advertise, or it's out there. If somebody would want to use it for commercial use, you would listen. Is that about what it is?
Sorry, say that again. If it was
If
proposed
Somebody
for,
outside wanted to come in and buy one of the properties in that it could be reconsidered as commercial, but it would have to come before you for that answer.
correct,
Right.
the zoning district today is R1 along Maple Lane. So even if it has the designation of commercial center, there has to be a public hearing process to allow that to occur. Yes.
And this is going back to your answer. I came over to visit you and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Nick. Okay, further questions, comments on this matter? Yes, sure, great, come on up, and please into the microphone, let us have your name and address for the record, please.
Hey, Barry, and I live at 14 Maple Lane.
Okay.
I want to know if anyone has been out there to the property on this committee. Has anyone seen what's going on out there? No one.
Well,
On this,
Which
on this,
particular property? Which property? Ken?
yeah,
Which one?
all of the land across from us, this land that's behind a lot of these people. Has anyone seen this? Has anyone been out there to look at this?
no, not recently, no.
Only driving by on, to see up the hill, but
Okay, so no one has really seen what's going on as far as the property behind these homes. This piece of property that's behind all these homes across the street from us. No one has seen it.
is there?
If I may, yes,
is-
I have, because I walk my pug up your street. And I know that, but it's hard to distinguish from the street what is this property and what's an extension of the backyards. And also, in trying to get to that lot, it's not an easy lot to get to if you're just walking. So either I have to go to the fire station parking lot and look back in.
Right.
So it's not that
Not
we,
easy to see.
it's not easy to see. So
Well,
if you
it
have
is
some,
for us.
Yeah.
So I just didn't know who put the sign up for the rezoning? You did. Okay, so you've been out there and you've seen the lots. You've seen what's behind these houses.
Well, I think to get to Commissioner Driscoll's point, when you're standing there, you don't know where the back property line is. So you're looking past houses, between houses and into their rear yards. And
Right.
it's hard to tell where the lot line ends and where this parcel in the middle necessarily begins.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I actually would have a question for this,
Miss Barry?
Ms. Berry?
Ms. Barry. Yeah, I mean, you came up and asked us if we knew what was back there, but you didn't tell us what is back there.
In everybody's mailbox. This piece of paper was in everybody's mailbox. And it just to what's underlined is amended from the commercial center future land use designated as the traditional neighborhood future land use. So is there enough? Could you see enough that something could be built there? You have to put a road there. You know, it's just goes on from South Main Street. So,
Right. Okay. So I think I understand what your concern is. So the map is, you know,
we haven't gotten that.
right. Sure. So this is available on the website, correct? Yeah. And this just shows sort of, you know, when they're making a map, they're looking at contiguous areas and so it sounds like what's behind your houses is just what looks like a yard. Is that correct?
Is this the area that is owned by the woman in Richmond?
Yes.
Okay.
They own the land.
The owner that owns this,
Owns
owns this, and owns the Kenny's property.
The Kenny's property.
Kenny's is right
Okay,
there.
right, exactly. They own that too.
On this, with this also?
So we can get
On
them.
that, yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's right, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, further, anyone else, comments, questions? Okay, good. So we'll close the public comment period, and I think we now have plenty to talk about. So I think, as already pointed out, what we're trying to do with the street of houses on Maple is just to correct an error on the map, that we never meant them to be put under any sort of commercial designation. That was just an oversight. But by putting them there accidentally, it made it look like that if someone did come in and bought those houses, they could go commercial. And we don't want that for that street. And then it sounds like the concern that's been raised is, well, the property behind all y'all's houses is an open area, and you're concerned that if that area there gets developed, the part that's above the firehouse and the funeral home and could it be developed up, how far up, right? So it's a question of where does your backyard really end? I don't know if any of you have fences back there or whether your kind of backyards just kind of blend into that open area so the deer can get through easily without any fences, it sounds like. We will say, so I think we might want to talk about if we can remember when we were doing the designation, you know, looking at this map, how we put that there to that point. And also, if there were development in that area behind your houses, above the firehouse and so forth, there would of course be regulations about setbacks and boundaries and how the development between a commercial area and a residential area exists. And so that's part of our zoning, is to make sure that, you know, you're right 1 foot off your backyard isn't a big commercial building, right? So that's a sort of thing. And I think Mr. Nick brought that up. Someone would have to come in if they wanted to develop any of those portions that are going to be left in red. They'd have to come in, you know, go through the regular process of proposing what they want and going through all the regulations and so forth.
May I ask for a little clarification, please?
So yeah, so
Okay. The map where the lots are in yellow, outlined in yellow, those 8 lots that these people are here concerned about. Okay, then that's in a overview. Don't we call it R1? What do we call that?
The zoning district is R1. You'll see that on the previous page.
Exactly. So the lot in question right behind them is also R1, correct? Okay, so they can't develop that as commercial unless they come and try and change the zoning.
Correct. And that'll be a public hearing process.
I mean, maybe that might help clarify and assuage some of the concern. I don't know.
Although I
Does
think
that-
that
Is that, I mean, if I'm looking at that correctly,
yeah, you're right. But I think that the concern is that it has been designated as an opportunity area. So, which is not in line with the zoning.
Right.
So you might look at, so let's say some future planning commission might, on which none of us currently serve, right? I mean, this is possible.
Apparently not
for-
me.
Right. Particularly not Pat. So, some future planning commission is going to look at this and say, oh, well, the planning commissioners of the past clearly identified this area behind these houses as an opportunity area that, let's be guided by our forebears and say yes to the change, of this, some future owner of this property. So I think that that's the question, is whether that is, as planning commissioners, if that's actually the intent. I mean, I assume that was the intent of when this was drawn up, that could in fact change. But maybe one question that I have for you, Arnie, is what are the setbacks for, like, let's say that somebody came in and changed that to C1, and was
C2.
requesting it and it was approved as C1. What would the setbacks from a residential area then be?
The C2 zoning district would be a rear yard setback of 30 feet when abutting a residential district. And in addition to the setback, I can't have to find it, but we also have a landscape buffer, a minimum landscape buffer that has to be planted within that area as well.
Okay, so to you all's point, it would be 30 feet from your back, back lot line, correct? Plus landscaping within that 30 feet.
Can I add one more thing along
Yeah,
the same
please.
line of thought? Building height in C2 is a maximum of 45 feet. And in the R1 zoning district, it's 35 feet. But if you have enough side yard, according to a calculation, you can also go up to 45 feet
In R1.
in R1. So you have something you can have. Most of the houses over there are story and a half, I think, maybe a couple of 2 stories. So they're not going to be exactly 45 feet in height, but just to give you an understanding that they do have the ability to have the same type of height as what's allowed currently in the C2 zoning district.
Right. And we couldn't do C1 there. It would just be C2.
It would be C2. I had forgot to bring my future land use, my comprehensive plan with me with
good.
all the different charts in there. That I'm reasonably sure that commercial center will only be compatible with C2. And there's a different designation for downtown where we have the C1 zoning district.
Okay.
A follow-up question from Ms. Berry. I'm sorry, go on. I'm sorry. Teacher should remember names. I'm a teacher too.
Okay, so you said the setbacks, but what about like parking? Like how many cars and parking lots and all that kind of stuff? I mean, and traffic, and I mean, there's a lot more to commercial stuff than if you have a couple of houses.
Right. And there are regulations about all of that.
There's also no access, actually.
Right. Well, right. I mean, this is one of these things that's in a way is speculative because nobody has come forward and said, we're buying this all up and want to do a comprehensive thing here. But we have a whole range of zoning regulations for that sort of thing, the numbers of parking spaces.
Really, really change our little street,
That's correct.
like significantly, and make it much less nice and, property values dropping and all that kind of stuff.
How wide is that strip of that we're
Not
doing
that
now?
wide.
I don't have access to
Yeah.
GIS, so I can't approximate it right now.
Right. Right.
Yeah. How deep are your yards?
Yeah. How deep are you?
Do any of you know how deep your yard?
Hmm.
85 feet deep.
From your, okay.
So this looks like it's probably about the same depth, the strip that goes along behind your yards. Based on this map, might be a little bit less. Is it common? I know I asked this question before, but is it common to have a property split between two zoning districts?
It's not common, but we do have that instance. As an example,
We had it at
the
W.
hub property where the radio station / library used to be, the
Oh,
one
yeah.
story attached to
The
the
old library, yeah,
two-story
yep.
building.
Yep.
Two-story was residential and at one point and the one-story building was commercial. So it was all on one parcel, but it was just split between that sort of party wall between the two as an example.
Okay,
Not common, but it
right.
does happen.
Oh, are we in the discussion?
We're in
period?
we're in the discussion period, yeah, which is, it's kind of,
It's all right.
okay, had I closed the public comment period?
Somebody wants to speak.
I understand, but,
Yeah, right.
Close and
I
then
think you
reopen.
did.
and I reopened, okay, so we're reopening the public comment period, so. Where's Matt Tucker? I need him. He knows okay, so your name and
My name
address.
is Leslie Tucker and I live at 7 Maple Lane and I'm just trying to clarify as well.
Yeah.
Thank you for your comments and yours. So I enjoy that strip as well. And my neighbor, Dean Nick, raised the same question I have, which is by creating a zone of opportunity, is that opening a door, setting a new precedent and inviting a big change to the character of the neighborhood? And we know our city of Lexington wants to earn tax revenue and that's understood. But I guess all of us are here interested to know if the character and residential feel of the neighborhood could remain the same, or are we now just by putting a little language into some zoning, it opens the door for your those that come after you. And so can you answer that question for me? Is that kind of what you were hinting at? Yeah. And is there anything that could be done to ensure that the neighborhood retains its current status and character? That's my question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, real quick,
Wait, do you want to close public comment?
before I close it
Unless, yeah.
again, any other, we will close the public comment. Arnie, where the firehouse is, the funeral home, what zoning districts are they?
C2.
That's C2. So on the page 43 map, all the light pink there, that's all C2. So that's already C2 district, right?
Yeah.
And around the corner where the farmers co-op is, and then it becomes the residential mixed, right, zoning district, right? Where there's a big open field right across from Maury River, right? There's a lot of open space there, right? Okay, so that's already designated as a mixed, and so we could conceivably right now have what there on the corner of Wallace and Waddell? What could be there?
Apologize. I came here and didn't bring my.
Right, okay,
my
but I mean, in other
plan.
words, it's
A mixed use neighborhood, meaning commercial and residential. It's already zoned RM for residential
Right.
multifamily, so apartments could certainly go
Okay,
there.
okay.
But the mixed use designation would also allow commercial, probably to a smaller scale than the residential, but a mix of uses.
Is that what that is? Did I have that right? Or is the RM residential multifamily?
RM is
RM
residential multifamily.
multifamily,
So that's
okay.
the zoning district.
Okay.
And the mixed use neighborhood is the future land use designation.
Right, okay. So I think what the question is, what our intention with this right tonight was to preserve that street, those row of 8 houses, that neighborhood, so to speak. On the other, behind it is already something different. In other words, it's not neighborhood behind it, I think. I mean, that's kind of you look at it, you got a fire department, you got a funeral home, right? So it's a kind of a question, and we always run into this with zoning, is where do you put what can be put where does a neighborhood end? When does something else start? And so I think the question that, again, we're still at is how much buffer would there be between your residential backyards behind your neighborhood and something new? I think in that area, given I'm sure you've seen in the news about the VDOT property, which is next to Maury River Middle School, which is slated for development into apartment buildings and some commercial. So that area is changing. That area, it is already changing, and they'll we had nothing imminent for those properties right now where the fire department is down to the co-op. There's nothing in the works for that right now. But I think that's in the development of our comprehensive plan, it was an area where we thought that would be a good place for development. Whether it's all commercial or a mixture of commercial and residential. So yeah, that was designated, and that was kind of the decision in the comprehensive plan to say, yeah, this is a place we'd like to see development, because there's not a lot of places left in the city where there can be that kind of development. So the question, I don't think we have to decide it tonight necessarily about that buffer. I mean, I think we definitely want to decide about that street and get that out of the question, right? That's what that was the main thing. And now this has raised other questions that people have concerns about. We definitely want to get that out of the way. And then the question is, when do we need to imminently talk about that strip of property? Because as it stands now, if someone came in and developed, as Arnie was reading, there are buffers, there are protections to soften the change from one area to another, from one zone to another. Does that make sense? Anyone want to add to that?
Yes, I would. Going back to Mary Stewart, it was in my mind, and then she pointed it out, that I think the zoning map on 43, page 43, should be guiding some of this discussion. And that existing strip of land that we're talking about. So let's take out the houses on Maple. We're all in agreement that that was a mistake. So the question is the buffer area. Let's not even call it a buffer area, calling it, that was 2 parcels. Currently it's zoned R1. And when you look at that map, there's a very good spatial logic for why the fire department, the funeral home, and the dance studio and the dentist's office, farmer's co-op, that area is the commercial area that fronts Main Street. Extending that back into that lot, to me, is not quite logical. And splitting the parcels, and Arnie and I talked about this today, and it's the same question Shannon brought up. Having the parcel split between 2 zoning districts on those 2 properties that face South Main, I think is create potential future challenges. And if I remember, Arnie, we had a long discussion about what to do at WNL when we did the master plan, and there was a split in zoning between WNL parcels and the institutional overlay. Not remembering details, the point was that we had to somehow adjust or accommodate for that. So to me, when I look at the map, it's pretty clear what should be that the opportunity area is meant to be opportunity area for commercial zoning. And I think, that the logic just stands out. Now, I may be too simplistic in that, but that to me makes sense.
That I would agree with you. And I guess that maybe this would be something that we would take up at another meeting, discussing further changing the future land use map for this commercial center opportunity area. Is that?
Because it can't be done
We would
tonight.
have to advertise.
Right, it can't be
It can't be done tonight.
Right. So the process for those of you in the audience, the process is that you have to advertise these things, and you have to let the folks who own the properties know, and yeah.
So following that train of thought, you could recommend for approval of the change to the future land use designations for the 8 parcels that were advertised. Right. And then along with that, you can make an extra statement, something to the effect, and recommend that council consider future discussions or amendments to the map for the middle parcel, or however you want to sort of describe that parcel that's in the middle. But what we cannot do, what you just stated, is do anything more than what's been advertised. The 8 lots have been advertised. We were only trying to correct an issue with those. And then it becomes a question, at least in my mind, what was the intent for that middle lot? And I have a hard time telling you that I think the intent for that middle lot was to be commercial and opportunity area, when we clearly went too far with the boundary over onto the 8 lots. Right. So that is a separate question than what you're being asked this evening, which is to address those 8 lots in particular.
So, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
So if we made that recommendation, would that be to council or would that be to the commission that we take this up in the future?
Well, I think what you could do is read into your suggested motion, and then you could add on to that. And we also recommend the council
Council or commission?
council reevaluate, or council consider reevaluating that middle parcel and maybe directing planning commission to pick that up at some point in the future. So that you're not just making the recommendation for the 8 parcels, you're also adding a little bit to that recommendation about maybe opening up this discussion again about the middle parcel. When I say the middle parcel, I mean the middle parcel and the rear portions of
And
the
the
other
rear,
2
yeah.
parcels.
I would almost suggest that we also look at the mixed use neighborhood that's quite small in the middle there and also splits two parcels. Because honestly, there's plenty of,
Can you elaborate a little bit, Shannon?
so on page 44,
Mhm.
the pink area that's mixed use neighborhood of where Kenny's is. And the bottom parts of those are in that same commercial center opportunity area. And I would suggest that, it's not clear to me why those parcels are not also mixed use neighborhood, as opposed to being split between mixed use neighborhood and commercial center and opportunity area. And also notably, the back one abuts one of the Maple Lane properties. So it's sort of the same issue of, sort of bumping what has historically been a very quiet neighborhood up against what could be a much less quiet area.
Again, Arnie, help me here and help our discussion. To me, and I'm not sure of the legality of this, but what takes precedent is the existing zoning and then if we go down to the next level, the future land use map is probably, again, this goes to the question that was asked tonight. What does that mean? And then the third designation that we're playing around here is with the opportunity areas.
Yeah.
So if we looked at them each individually, and this might be part of a future discussion with us. I would say the opportunity area is probably the lowest on the scale in terms of designating actual uses. Would I be correct in saying that? Or in the land use map, it says this is an area where, because I don't think are we saying in the opportunity area that you can have more density than you could in another area?
Maybe I'll try to answer this maybe a little bit differently if you
Okay,
don't mind.
please.
Yes, the zoning is what governs. So on page 43, you have the zoning map. You have the parcels along Maple Lane, they're zoned R1, and those other parcels, as were already mentioned, along South Main, further down from the fire department down, or C2 zoning district. And we have an entire zoning ordinance devoted to what can happen on those. So that's what governs for those.
Okay.
And I almost look at going up as opposed to down, but then you have a future land use designation. So if somebody were to propose something else for those parcels, then you look at the guidance that's provided in the comprehensive plan for what could happen in the future for those parcels. And if you're in a residentially zoned property right now and it's traditional neighborhood, then you really can't do much more than what you already are allowed. But if it has a commercial center, then yes, there is the possibility of doing more, but it's still a public hearing process. So just because it has a commercial center doesn't mean that they automatically get the rezoning to C2. It goes through the public hearing process. Conditions can be placed on, particularly if it's a conditional use permit. So there are other layers of control over top. But because I don't have the future land use map or comprehensive plan in front of me, and I apologize again for that. But it is perhaps a little bit looser language of what can happen in an opportunity area, but it is an area that is deemed to have opportunity for redevelopment. So if we look at this particular part of town and we look at everything that is C2 and a little bit more than C2 currently, and that's what we're discussing, but those properties are older. They may not be living up to their full potential just as far as, maintenance and use, and they're fairly large parcels. So it's an area of opportunity for perhaps to be redeveloped. Maybe that's the best way I can describe it without having the actual language in front of me. Does that get to all your points in your?
Yeah, that helps to clarify, because I'm just trying to understand which one, when we're looking at this and trying to evaluate the area in between, that's what we're gonna call it now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is the parcel that the folks are most concerned about and behind their property, is that now zoned R1? It is.
Yeah.
Right, but the future land use map is saying that really what we'd like is for this to
Yeah.
be commercial center.
But in order for us to do that, that
Yes,
has to come before the
Right.
public and so forth.
that is correct. So, yeah,
But as some residents of the neighborhood have noted, that this kind of like it having been set up that way sort of speaks as a gentle invitation to bring forward such possibilities, right? So I understand where the concern's coming from, for sure.
So Arnie, any further discussion of these areas? Opening that up again, the city or the council would have to direct us. We could not ourselves say we want to open this up and talk again about this.
It's in our bylaws, isn't it? One of them we can do and one of
Yeah,
them we
and
can't.
Right, so
Don't,
Yeah.
yeah.
The zoning, you have the ability to initiate a rezoning, but I can't recall off the top of my head if that's the same for the comprehensive plan amendment. But that's why I would recommend, if you want to go forward, I think you want to go forward with the 8 lots. Right?
Yeah.
Do you want to make an additional statement on the middle lot and the other 2 tail end lots? You can or you can't. And then we can figure out certainly, because the public still has the ability to show up at council and ask them the same questions that they're asking you tonight, is to readdress that middle property.
Yeah.
And then council can make a decision to approve the 8 and then potentially direct us to go back and reconsider an amendment to the future land use map for that middle parcel.
I think that makes sense, given the concerns that have been raised. I mean, I think it makes sense to get the 8 properties set up differently,
for sure.
given that there's an error acknowledged. That seems really clean and straightforward, but given the concerns that have been raised about the rest, I'm just wondering what's the most efficient way to ensure that conversation carries forward, so that we can take that up, which is what I think you're trying to give us, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Did you find something in there?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So I think the question will be to make a motion. Basically, we're going to want the suggested motion that's here to deal with our main matter at hand, and then make sure we wordsmith properly the further recommendation that.
But Arnie, are you looking up now to see if we can actually open it up ourselves?
Right.
Right.
Is that correct?
And I'm
So
hoping to
before
find,
we make a motion, we
Yeah,
should find
right.
that out.
Right. Do you folks understand what we were just, you heard all that? Okay.
unfortunately, I'm only finding quickly what can happen for an amendment to the zoning. So it's clear that a property owner can petition to have their property rezoned, but I'm not finding that property owner can also have a future land use map changed. And then I'm really not finding the part about what planning
Commission and
commission
plan- Wasn't
in
it in
the zoning
in
part.
those first three parts there? I remember when we debated this.
Subdivision ordinance is what you have control over, administration of the zoning ordinance and maintenance of the comprehensive plan, or the headings there.
So is this maintenance of the comp plan?
No, because there's no,
Yeah.
unlike with these parcels, there's
There's no
no clear
error.
error. There's no indication that we didn't mean to have the rest of it be.
Right.
So barring a clear answer for you, you can sort of loosely in your statement, if you're willing to make a separate statement from the recommendation for the 8 parcels, recommend council open up a discussion to reassess the future land use destination for the middle parcel, or something sort of more.
If we put them both in the same motion, council might say, oh,
Yeah.
this
we do
that'll
too.
cut
I'm hoping that you do the motion as written.
and then do a separate motion.
Maybe
Okay.
make sort of
So-
a comment or
Okay.
even a separate motion, however you want to handle that, or it can simply be a comment. And we also have listened to the comments from the public and think that we should perhaps
Right.
reassess that middle parcel designation.
All right.
In
So
doing so, though, do we even know the number of that parcel? I mean, what do we know about that parcel?
we will.
Can't do anything with it, so I don't think it matters what the parcel
Okay.
number is.
We
because
have
we've
it.
advertised,
I'm sorry.
we've only advertised the 8 parcels,
Yeah.
so that's all that you can really make a recommendation
Yeah.
about tonight, unless you want to give a little bit more direction to council
No.
in a separate statement.
And a separate motion.
It could either be a comment and we put it in the minutes and it just goes, or you can actually do a motion, and I don't know which would necessarily be best at this time. But in either case, you're getting something on the record that
Yep.
a discussion be started,
Yeah.
just like the one that we're having now for the 8 parcels be
Right.
reassessed
Right.
for that middle parcel.
And the public is here and we'll make sure we don't forget that we decided to talk about that. Right? That's
They absolutely have the opportunity in a month's time. You will get
To say-
the same
Yeah.
adjacent property letter that you got this time, and the yellow sign will have a new little attachment to it. So they will be well aware of when this goes to council in about a month's time, and have the ability to ask council directly also for that reassessment of the middle lot. No, I shouldn't say reassessment because that means something else.
yeah, right,
But-
right.
Of the internal lot, how?
Right.
turn that.
Turn.
Okay, so I think we're gonna want the motion here as suggested, and I don't know if we need to make a motion for city council, because we're still not clear whether we can take it back up ourselves. So I'm trying to think how to wordsmith this to say, I'm drawing a blank. How do we put it to basically go on record that we are going to consider this matter again?
Or we would like to consider this matter, or we, think that this is a matter worthy of being picked up and
Worthy of consideration. There has to be a little bit more emphasis to it. But that's all. I just want to make sure that it gets. To go back, Pat, I mean, I was thinking, a motion is better, but what do I know? Maybe a motion isn't better because we're not making a decision on something that was brought to us.
Right.
right.
We're making a recommendation. So maybe, Arnie, your point is that for the addendum to the motion. Sorry, folks, to get lost in this stuff, but
And then if you don't do a motion and you do a more generic statement, if we could all just have sort of, because in the motion, we would have a vote and we would know that the majority of you are in favor of that, but we won't have a vote. So if you can at least all
And
say
indicate
whether
our
or not you
agreement, yes.
agree or disagree,
I mean,
so we can pass that along to council as
Right.
well with your statement.
We do things where we will say we direct
Or
the
we-
planning director to
Mhm.
research the matter of taking up the question of these properties in terms of their.
Mhm.
All right, so let's, I say if someone wants to put forward a motion on these 8 properties that we're allowed to
Yep.
do.
I move to approve comprehensive plan amendment application CPA 2024-01 for the amendment of tax map numbers 28-13-3, 28-14-13, 28-14-14, 28-14-15, 28-14-16, 28-14-17, 29-17-18, and 28-17-19 to the traditional neighborhood future land use designation and for the removal of these same tax parcels from the opportunity area designation.
Second.
Okay. No more discussion on this motion, right? We're good. Okay, all in favor, aye, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so that carries, so that's taken care of. Now, would someone like to words?
It's your last time as chair and you
I
are
would,
such a wordsmith.
can I call Camille? Maybe she could help me.
You
So
said-
let's, so would you all, let's see, would you all be in favor? Would you all, if we were to direct, planning director to investigate the manner by which we could reconsider the designations on the comprehensive plan future land use map for the properties from Waddell up around Main Street, however they're designated.
Is it Waddell?
Yeah.
From Waddell over?
No, it's too far. Just say
Yeah,
the properties.
From Waddell, between Main Street and Wallace. Is that what we're talking about?
so are you talking about the entire opportunity area?
Well, you brought in the.
Yeah, no, I'm not
discussion.
talking about all of it. I'm just talking about the property that fronts on Waddell, the air.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
The area that's currently in RM zoning district on Waddell Street,
yeah. Right.
as well as the three properties that are, with the two properties that front on Main Street and the inner property that is between Maple and Main.
Currently zoned R1.
Okay, so
There we go.
I can't repeat that, so right, so that's what I was just trying to give the, we all agree that we're directing planning director to research how we can further discussion of these properties in question.
I would
These-
agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would it be sufficiently precise to just say the properties about which public concerns were raised as a
Yeah.
matter on this
Yeah,
meeting?
that's good to add.
Will that do it? Will that give you the,
Although that would not include these because they were only concerned about these areas behind their properties and not the ones next to the last property.
yeah, that's true. Okay, so this gives you enough to find out, does city council have to direct us or can we take it up ourselves again at some future point, right? Okay. Clear as mud, clear as mud. Does this make sense? So your properties are back to plain old residential. No one's been, and we're going to take this up again and try to figure out the best way to look at this map and put this map on, because it would require another hearing ultimately to redo that. Okay,
And may I just address them as well?
sure.
I just want to say that stay on top of it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you'll learn a lot about how this stuff works because there's always more to learn. Okay. All right. So that piece of new business is finished, right? Okay. Now you're welcome to stay for more. We got more work to do. You are welcome to go. We're going to talk now about our new, thank you all for coming out. We appreciate
Yes, thank you.
comments and your noticing that there's a zoning thing on your yard and taking part. So thank you.
See you when I'm walking Wally the pug.
Okay, so next, the fifth new business this evening is the zoning ordinance amendment 2024-03. So annual zoning ordinance amendments discussion of cottage housing, which is an ongoing discussion. Yeah, and I think we have time for this and we'll be okay. So Arnie's gonna pick up with a report from where we were.
I'll blaze through this. This is similar to what you saw at your last meeting with regard to cottage housing. At that point, we had Falls Church and the railroad cottages. So we had a nice comparison between the project that was actually built in highly detailed site plan. So we could see sort of how that worked. We're not quite so fortunate with Langley because there's not much on their website. And it was really difficult to even go through their zoning code because it's section by section. You can only search each little section at a time, but that's an aside. So page 49, you see the 3rd Street cottages in Langley, Washington. And just going to read quickly through. It's a 2/3 of an acre site. They have 8 detached cottages on 4 standard single family lots for a 31,000 square foot total. The homes are approximately 650 square feet with lofts up to 200 square feet and are conveyed as condominium ownership. The homes are situated around a shared garden with a commons building and a tool shed. Parking is detached and every residence has a storage room. And number 6, developed in accordance with the cottage housing development zoning code that allows double the density in Langley for detached homes in all single family zoning districts, provided the ground floor is less than 700 square feet and total area, including the second floor, is less than 975 total square feet. Cottages must face a usable landscape commons and have parking screened from the street. Projects are reviewed by the planning commission and a design review board. Any questions there sort of on how that development came about and some of those standards? And again, I guess the background of this is when we get to filling out the structure that we're going to utilize from Winchester, we would like to know how other people have done minimum lot size, maximum house size, or unit size, those types of things. So that's why we're going through a couple of these just to sort of get a feel for the cottage housing development type. The other interesting thing that was, I think, in the first presentation is this particular lot is almost exactly the same lot size as we have for that particular lot that the owner is not mentioned in any way, but at 201 North Randolph Street. So if you can envision these 8 units on that particular lot and just think about the houses and other structures that are around that. So that's why this one was included, because it does make such a good comparison. On the aerial photograph on the lower portion of page 49, it shows you those 8 units and then shows you the existing land use around it. I don't really know when this was dated, but you can see some houses that are on, and if you really squint, you can see the actual lot sizes. So the 4 lots that were there originally, and some of the houses to the left are all one house on the right, one house on 4 lots, and then some of the other ones are one house on a lot. So you can get a pretty good mix there of houses on 4 lots, a house on its own lot, and then these 8 that are on 4 lots, just as a comparison as this
And sorry, what is the address on Randolph?
201
201.
North Randolph Street, corner of Massey and Randolph.
Quick question, Arnie, the, in this bottom, view from above, those lot lines, those were the original lot lines, those, okay.
I believe so. So that you see how a house could be on sort of a quad there, and then these 8 were on 4 lots. It's not so easy to see anymore on the parcel where the 8 houses are, but you can clearly see left and right where those building lots still exist.
Okay.
And I'm going to go through this quickly, just as I did last time. So over on the next page, which is page 50, and I'm going to sort of the underlined parts, I think, are the most important. So I'm going to go through those. So in the cottage housing code for Langley, the density, they have a permitted density of 1 dwelling for each 2,904 square feet, and that would equal 15 units per acre. Minimum lot area is 11,616 square feet, and that would be 4 lots multiplied by the 2,904 that was just mentioned. Height limits, the structures 18 feet, but then they also provided a little bit more, up to 25 feet, as long as you have a high or more pitched roof. You'll have to determine for yourself as a 6 and 12 is a highly pitched roof or a medium pitched roof. But if you had a pitched roof above 6 and 12, then you can go up a little bit higher with your ridge. Floor area, we have maximum first floor area for principal structure, and then we get 2A and B there. At least 50% of the units of a floor area shall not exceed 650 square feet, and B, for not more than 50% of the units, the floor area may be up to 800 square feet. That seems a little bit complicated to me. I don't know why they wanted to have some of the floor plans, at least on the first floor, smaller than that amount and half of them bigger. I'm not sure the value of that. Maybe an architect could better describe as you're laying something out, why half should be this size and half should be that
Yeah,
size.
that's what-
So I don't really have a good answer there.
Thank you.
And then total area of 975 square feet. And we've seen anything in that, 600 range to 1,500 square foot range roughly for maximum sizes. Over on the next page, page 51, front yards of 10 feet, rear yards of 10 feet, and side yards of 5 feet. A required open space, so a minimum of 400 square feet per unit of common open space is required for each unit. And I think that's tracks pretty well for at least one of the other ones that we've seen. So for each unit you have to have a common open area of at least 400 square feet. And then number 2 also gets a little bit more into the design details. At least 50% of the cottage units shall abut the common open space. And all cottage units shall be within 60 feet of walking distance of the common open space. And the common open space shall have cottages abutting at least 2 sides. That's all stuff that the architect has to really figure out and deal with. And then it begs the question, if you need a little bit of flexibility, how do we allow that flexibility? Let's say one of the cottages isn't within 60 feet, it's 65 feet or so, how do we potentially allow that flexibility? Don't have an answer, just keep that in mind. Parking 1.25 spaces per dwelling unit. I think we've also seen that calculation elsewhere. And then typical for locations of them, you want them screened from direct view by one or more street facades, garage doors, and fences. Parking between structures is only allowed when it's located toward the rear of the parcel. Parking may not be located in the front yard. Again, we're trying to corral these over somewhere on the side and have them screened. And parking may be located between any structure in the rear lot line or the lot line of any structure in a side lot line, which is not a side street. So again, just trying to direct where the parking will be located. G at the bottom of page 51, cottage housing developments are subject to design review. Try to look up a little bit of what their design review authority and board is. They do have a design advisory board, and it has to go to them before any permit is issued. So their design advisory board curiously makes recommendations. So I don't know if a recommendation is coming from them and they're recommending against something, or that the houses be smaller or larger. How do they deal with that when the zoning comes through, and how do they take that into consideration? But for what it's worth, their design advisory board makes a recommendation. They also were, and I don't know if they've done it or if it was something that was already in place, but they have a set of design standards for these types of building developments. Similar to our architectural review board, they have design guidelines. So when they're making their decisions, they have some considerational criteria similar that you have for everything that you do. But then they also have a set design guidelines that says what you should do in a historic district in the front yard, the side yard, or if you have windows of this type or that type or brick. So they at least have a set of design standards that were presumably developed. And in the zoning districts, they are only permitted in the residential zoning districts. That's what it says in their ordinance. But further down, apparently it's also allowed in some of their PUD. I had a little bit of difficulty with their particular zoning ordinance trying to figure out what was approved when this went in place, and then how it has been amended over time. They've also, for a locality of 1,100 or so people, they've added in accessory dwelling units. They have added in tiny homes, I think in 3 different flavors. So they've done a lot of work, and sometimes it's hard to figure out what the distinctions are between all those things and what occurred or what was in place necessarily when this went in a number of years ago. So a couple additional notes there in green on the bottom or middle page 52. Their cottages appear to be considered single family dwellings, and dwellings are permitted by right in the 3 residential zoning districts as well as the 2 lower intensity PUD districts. They have 3 total PUD districts. Cottage housing development consists of between 4 and 12 cottages. That's pretty common from what we've seen so far. And there are a number of additional standards included in their design review. And then that bottom part, there was a question, I think, at the last meeting, sort of like who's the target audience for these things. So this little snippet I just cut and pasted from Ross Chapin's website. He's talking about how the project sold out quickly, sparked widespread interest and demand. It drew attention from the national media, received numerous awards and recognition. And the homers apparently were active singles and couples, one with a 3-year-old between the ages of 40 and 65. I have a computer software trainer, a graphic artist, a musician, a secretary, a realtor, a retired librarian, attorney, and therapist. Nearly all own only one automobile. Cottages within the group that have resold have been as much as 250% of the original price, proving their enduring value, but maybe not their affordability. And then there's that website reference about, so that just explaining why I put that in there because of that question that we had at the last meeting. And that's really all I have for that presentation. At the next, happy to answer any questions. At the next meeting, we'll prepare for you a similar sort of product for what was proposed by Max Ivankov. He had Arthur Bartenstein put a number of slides together and a number of different versions of their development plan for his property in the corner of Walker and Houston Street. So that will be provided. There's no zoning text to go along with that yet, obviously. So we'll just review that at the next meeting. And then following that, we will get into the structure that we're going to follow with Winchester. And then what I'm planning on doing, and I've already started, is for the first item as an example, the first element in the Winchester is the purpose and intent statement. I'll give you 2 or 3 or 4 other purpose and intent statements from other cottage housing. We'll discuss that thoroughly and figure out which way you want to go with that particular element. And then we'll move on to parking and all the other different elements. So I'm planning on providing to use the structure and then choices within each element.
All right, so that's the staff report. And if we're going to follow our outline, we'll open up the public comment and then we'll have any discussion we want to have on what Arnie's just presented to us. So of any of the public that is left, have anything to say, add? Okay, we'll close that public comment period. And what do folks think about what we've just been presented with?
It sounds like Langley, so you said it's 1,100 people,
Wow.
so it's quite small. I wrote this comment about, how walkable is it, or, to groceries and activities because they say nearly everyone owns only one automobile. And then it occurred to me as you were commenting about the, why would they have had at least 50% of the units not exceed 650 square feet. I wonder if they were actually really trying to say, we only want single people.
Singles.
We're trying to accommodate people who are going to be single people who are almost certainly only going to have one car. And that might sort of, it's just sort of like, well, that's one way of sort of regulating or ensuring, I should say, that you don't have too many vehicles for the 1.25 parking spaces.
Yeah. I haven't been to Langley, so I can't speak to how walkable or how many services are within walking distance or biking distance. So we will have to sort of wrestle with that as well when we get to the parking discussion.
Yeah, I was thinking about the square footage rules too, and can only speculate as well. But I was wondering if they weren't trying, they're trying to create communities, right? And so maybe the reason they're stipulating variable sizes is that maybe they want a diversity of like household structures there. But I guess I could read more about that or something. Purely speculation.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting approach though.
Yeah.
Right. To have these different sizes, because it also means that you're not going to have cookie cutter houses. They're not all going to be exactly the same. You're ensuring that you've got some diversity of physical qualities of the houses, which is kind of nice.
We'll see that also in some of the other design criteria where we see you can't have the wall be greater than X distance, has to be articulated and then So we'll have some of that variety too, if,
Right.
depending on how much of the design we want to put into our code.
What did you?
Although this removes some of the requirement to put all that design in there. You have to design it differently if you have to have two different sizes. Sorry, John.
No. No, I was just gonna ask Arnie, which one do you like this code compared to the others, or you?
Since it's hard
No,
to
it's
say
hard
because
'cause
when you
now-
haven't actually implemented one and you don't know sort of what the pinch points are necessarily.
Right.
And there's a good bit of variety in the cottage housing codes that I've read. And we've also had more recently adopted and haven't provided to you yet. Abingdon and Vienna have also been added to the list in Virginia, just as an example. So there's quite a bit of variety in sort of the length and how much they want to get into. And that's why I think it's valuable, again, to go through Winchester, because it did sort of cover a lot of bases, even if we cut out some of those because we don't feel like we need them. But I can't say that I have a
Okay,
particular favorite.
that's good. Thank you. That's helpful.
And what wasn't one of the communities that they hadn't had any,
That's the
Big-
caveat
but
with
that-
Winchester.
right,
They haven't
right,
had
right.
it yet. They haven't built any yet.
But part of that was that like you and I were looking at those numbers and you
Yeah.
couldn't actually do it.
So they had the issue of a competing PUD zoning that people were utilizing just because it was easier.
Yeah.
And then the calibration sort of, that's what we have to be careful. I think the structure is good because it's detailed,
Mhm.
but we have to be careful about sort of the calibration, lot sizes, which
Right.
don't add up.
Right. The issue was that like you had to have a certain amount of public space and a certain amount of yard space and a certain size of the lot minimum or maximum, and it just wasn't adding up. There was no way to do it.
Very, very quickly, in our R1 and R2, could something like this be proposed using a different, the PUD, for example?
We don't have the only PUD we have currently is the PD mixed use. So we do not have a PUD like we've had in the past, which is the PUD has changed over time. 60 West is a good example of that was the reason the PUD zoning came into play or was developed in 1990, I think it was. And those are duplexes. They're zero lot lines, so they're on their own property, but they're smashed together as a duplex and the lot line goes down. And I can't tell you right now whether the lot sizes met or didn't meet, but they're probably narrower and smaller than what would have been allowed in R1 or R2 or R1A back in the day as that was. So we have had a PUD that was sort of focused on residential. And then I think in my period of time, it's went to more of a commercial focus. And then we recently really refocused it only in the C2 zoning districts, which are out South Main and East Nelson Street, or when we try to encourage somebody to do a redevelopment of those parcels or a parcel out there where you could do commercial on the first floor and residential above. So if we wanted to, we could go back to cottage housing as a cottage housing thing. But we could also investigate if that's what I think I'm hearing, but may not be hearing, to reassess whether or not a separate PUD for residential is worthwhile to have, other than what would be allowed as a cottage housing. So
I mean, instead of cottage
No,
housing, in addition
I
to.
just don't
Oh.
really see the main difference. That's all. I don't see the
between,
PUD. Well,
Okay,
and then there are some differences where they have the parking over there, and the shared space. I can see that. But,
right now, the only PUD we have is PDMU, Plan Development Mixed Use. It's only allowed in their C2 zoning districts, and it's only allowed for commercial on the first floor and some levels of residential above. So we don't currently have a planned development residential that would allow 60 West as an
Okay.
example,
Okay.
or allow Weatherburn as an example. So, but I don't think I would recommend, and I'm pretty sure I wouldn't recommend to you to do some sort of hybrid thing where we have one PUD that allows cottage housing and this other residential sort of PUD. I would stick with the more of a pure zoning district PUD, whatever it ends up being for cottage housing, and then try to develop something else if you're trying to look for more flexibility beyond cottage housing in the residential districts.
Good question. And the other issue is the minimum lot size right now for PUD is 3 acres. Right.
Again, that only applies to PDMU, but
PDMU, but
but we can have all the PUDs you want in different flavors. I mean, there's no harm in doing that if that's what's necessary.
I think Stanton and Harrisonburg do have various ones.
Some
tied
of
to
them
the
have
zone.
quite a
Yeah.
number of.
On the lot over on the one that Max wants to develop, do we know yet, like, what would be the maximum amount of those houses that he's planning on putting in there or would like to?
Well, he has a proposal. I gotta remember. And you'll be getting, I think there are 3 different versions, and one of them has 8, 9, and maybe I think the maximum was 11. And that's on 0.56, so a little bit more than half an acre. Oh, sorry. That's the main parcel out there is half an acre, and then he has another parcel beside it that's, I can't remember the square footage, so it's a little bit more. So let's say we're around 3/4 of an acre, and has up to 11 units shown. But we haven't set the standard yet on what
Yeah.
density will be, so that's their proposal. And to be fair, Max was going to submit his own update or text amendment. Thank you. And then he got busy with other things, and that's why we're picking up, because we're now at our schedule and we're picking up with it. So without perhaps knowing as much as what you know now about cottage housing, that was his proposal through Arthur's research. And you'll see that a number of slides at your next meeting where they're sort of going through why cottage housing is important and then laying it out in a couple of different ways. But again, they're shooting in the dark because we don't have the text for it yet.
And
So just take it for what it's worth.
I think so I think one of the questions at the last meeting I was here for, it seems like the rule of thumb seems that they're trying to get twice the density that you normally could have for a property. And so I think the question is, I think this came up, what could be there now if we didn't do anything, if somehow either he, re-subdivided or combined those parcels, how much could go there now without having to come up with a whole new
I was
thing.
trying to play around with that this afternoon. I don't have a survey of the property,
Yeah.
But the one parcel, so there's 2 parcels. One parcel faces onto Walker Street, and then the other one's right on the corner of Walker and Houston. So the larger parcel has enough square footage to actually be split into 3 parcels. But I can't, without having the survey, I can't figure out if there's going to have enough lot width to make it all work. But it's on a corner, so let's presume that there are 3 that could go on that. And then we have the extra one, so 4.
Right.
So in theory, in practice, if we follow the doubling, then 8.
8, right. Which is not out of line of what maybe he's thinking right now.
He's a little bit above 8.
A little bit above it, yeah.
At least in 1 or 2 of his
Yeah,
proposals.
right.
And then we also have sort of the oddity, maybe that's not the right way of saying it, but in our R1 zoning district, all those parcels are R1 that Max owns, those 2 parcels. We also have the ability to do accessory dwelling and the main anyway, and you can also do a duplex on each of those. So in theory, he could already get 8 units just by doing duplexes on
Right.
those 4 lots.
Right.
But I'm not saying that we take that and then double it.
Right.
Everything that we've seen so far is doubling of the single family portion
Right.
of the density calculation.
Right. But I mean, if he wanted, it's a question of if he's the developer and he wants to, what does he want? Does he want duplexes or does he want the detached single family? If you can get 8 one way or the other, he's going to want what's easiest, cheapest, and what he can most profit on.
And then also maybe for your discussion, what do you want to incentivize?
Right. Yep.
Do you like the cottage housing product better than perhaps the duplex that's a by right? And then therefore do you
Right.
do 2.25 units per,
Right, like,
as opposed, just to give a little bit more incentive to do
Yeah.
something
like
additional.
what fits
than-
better into the neighborhood, what's gonna look better.
With the cottage housing, will there always be, what is it,
Homeowner.
homeowners association,
That's the
which
other
just
question.
adds more money that people going in there want, maybe some lesser expensive housing, but then they have to add in, a homeowners association, which maybe won't be a huge amount, but it's still more money.
I've never lived in a homeowners association, so I have no personal experience with this. But all of these have to be under some sort of unified control in the sense that somebody's got to take care of the common open area. And if there's a common building of some sort, somebody's got to take care of those as well. So there's probably going to be an HOA or some similar structure, but there's not there's not the pool and the spa and all those other things that really take maintenance costs and that you have to set money aside for. And so I'm hoping that this isn't going to be a typical HOA fee of hundreds of dollars per month. But that's up to the developer and up to the purchaser to figure out whether or not that's something that's in their budget.
Okay. All right,
Saying if you can already put 8 houses or 6 houses on that lot, then why bother to go with something that has to have a,
Yeah, but it is a different
Homeowners.
product. I mean, it is a completely different product than putting up 4 duplexes.
right, so we don't have to, we don't have to do anything for that right now. We have the zoning for that. The question is, we want to do this so that that option is on the table as well. And we might, as you said, we might like that better in terms of where it is in the space and so forth. So in the interest of time, is there any other big questions? So I think Arnie, you had sketched out where we're going with this over the next couple of meetings, right? Okay. So should we close this portion of our evening? Yes. Okay. So that brings us to other business. And so, John, we're going to turn it over to you for a green infrastructure status report.
If you don't mind, do I have your permission, Chair, to step off the dais?
Yes, you may step off the dais. Yes, you are excused from the dais.
Very respectful.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hey. So what I'm going to do tonight is give you a short, can you see? Oh, we get to see more. We get to see us too. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, that's all right. We can make it work. This is an interim report on activities for the Lexington Healthy Green Neighborhood Coalition. And I'll give you a little bit of background. I'll try to be like Arnie, short, succinct, comprehensive. The cover, I think, is very illustrative. It tells you who's in this partnership. So we have the city of Lexington and then 3 of our major institutions, Carillion, Washington, and Lee and VI. And then 3 of our very active conservation education, not-for-profits, Rockbridge Conservation, Boxerwood, and Friends of Woods Creek. How do I advance?
Try the mouse button, John.
Page up, page down.
No, no.
Up here?
No.
Oh, yeah, okay, maybe we do it that way. Okay, great. The origin story. When we were doing the comprehensive plan back in 2019, we were updating the chapter on green infrastructure and realized we could use some help. So we invited in a group of people to help us with we had a working group that gave us good advice. And the other aspect of the comprehensive plan was recommending catalyst projects. So catalyst projects were, I think we had 6 or 10 or not that many, enough, which were ways to engage the plan and start something with the plan. And so one of the catalyst projects was, let's do a green infrastructure plan. And then we realized that was a bit too ambitious. So what we did was we reconvened the Green Infrastructure Working Group and brought them together, and Pat chaired it, and I kind of was the secretariat and report writer, minute taker. And we worked with him for a year and came up with getting greener in Lexington, moving the conversation forward. And the idea was, the basis was, look at what the chapter said, and then how do we expand on the objectives there in practical ways. We presented that to City Council in January of 23. And at the same time, and with the help of one of the members here who also did some good grant writing, the initiative was, we got startup funding from the Rockbridge Community Health Foundation and Carilion Hospital. And that was primarily to fund a coordinator to work, to be the secretariat and the coordinator for all of these groups. Yeah, it's always nice when you figure it out. Their first 3 activities from September, they started meeting really in September twice a month. And so the first part was organizational, hiring a coordinator, Ashley Jurgen, who worked through April of this year and had to leave for health reasons. Forming the steering committee, looking at the green infrastructure report, et cetera, and becoming familiar with what we call the collective impact model, which was, by the way, how Rockbridge Outdoors works, how Healthy Rockbridge works. So it's not a new way of organizing groups to Rockbridge and Lexington. Focus of activities was tree planting, Woods Creek and Jordan's Point. There's a new gravel bed for trees. So you have a picture of it there out at Public Works. That's for small bare root trees that you can plant, and then they grow, and then you can plant them in the future. And then discussions on what can we do in Lexington's neighborhoods to promote more tree planting. And then if you've been walking along Woods Creek, there's been a lot of work going on there. With the removal of invasives. On the city section, WNL is working on a plan also to improve the 2 little footbridges and other things where the Montessori school and the WNL and the creek all merge. There's going to be some work there through a small grant to deal with the stormwater issues. So what's really interesting is that from the beginning of Woods Creek all the way to Jordan's Point, it's being looked at as one entity, even though it goes through quote unquote 3 jurisdictions. And Jane Stewart, who's the WNL representative, it's in the report, but I like very much how she quoted in the WNL publication about this. So Woods Creek runs through property owned by the city, WNL, and VMI. If the city is doing one thing and we're doing another and VMI is doing another, you can't manage that. There has to be a coherent strategy among everyone who cares about it. And then we also have this incredibly engaged community of people who love the creek and use the trail all the time and have very strong feelings about protecting these resources. The work on the creek is just one example of the kind of projects this group hopes to support. And the other benefit of this is that you're engaging the volunteer networks of these groups. So Boxerwood, Master Gardeners, Friends of Woods Creek, WNL, and 4-H. The top picture on the left, I think is the 4-H group, along with the picture at the very top with Will Guild, they're planting at Jordan's Point. Bottom left is Friends of Woods Creek and Master Gardeners. And middle is WNL soccer team, women's soccer team. And on the right is Public Works, including Ray in the blue, who is the city arborist. And so there's been a lot of collaboration through the coordination that happens with the group. Future direction, after the group worked through April, and they kind of said, okay, we've gotten to know each other, we get to know what each of us are contributing. But now they said, maybe we should go back to what the Green Infrastructure Working Group recommended and focus on these 5 areas. And then how can we help make those happen as they're stated in the comprehensive plan and in the report? So that's the next bit of work. They want to begin to review the capital investment program and the comprehensive plan. And in the report, you'll see a more extensive listing of possible projects to be looking at. Funding, pretty basic. It's either your own money or you get money, external funding. And in the city's case, it's a combination of operational funds and also capital investment funding, which you can get either from your own resources or from grants. So funders like partnerships. And if you look on page 6, in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through it, but you'll see in there examples of funding that the city has received towards initiatives, and also what the not-for-profits have brought to the table. And they might be small amounts, but they're the kinds of things that allow a lot to happen. So that's the story there. And then lastly, next steps is the update to you all, and then if city council is interested, we can also give a presentation. And we're planning schedules, meeting schedules where we're going to focus on themes. So for example, the next meeting at the end of June, there's an interest in looking at the tree canopy study. And so we're going to have someone from the tree board give a presentation on the 2022 tree canopy study. And then begin to say, okay, among all of the partners, how can we contribute to fulfilling the goals of the tree canopy, which is to increase it. And when you get down to the details of that, you have basically 3 areas. Public land, which is the easiest one to plant trees. Institutional space, so our 3 major ones that are even on the committee, VMI, WNL, and Carillion. And then private property. And that's probably the hardest one to do. So the idea is, how can we support the tree board in doing that, and the partners? And then other ones are, they've shown an interest in looking at recycling, bicycle, pedestrian, et cetera, et cetera. So following that list. So by September, we'll do an evaluation and then really identify what are the specific projects we can focus on. And so as a startup project, I think they've been successful. Now, why do I say they? And then why am I here? Unfortunately, Ashley, who was doing a great job, had to resign for health reasons. And they were looking for someone else to take over for the rest of the grant period. And they couldn't find anybody. And so I offered, given the fact that Pat and I had been involved in this from the beginning, to step in and do it on an interim pro bono basis. And the balance of the financing, which is around $5,000 available for a coordinator, we're asking that be redirected so that a grant writer could be hired for specific grant writing activities to support the group. And I've said I do it on an interim basis. I think this is beginning to show it does have legs and it can continue. So I think we'll work on the governance issue after we start here too. Pat was instrumental in guiding our group when we did the working group.
Give me too much credit, but yes, it was fun to be along.
So any questions?
And we did see it as an outgrowth of the comprehensive plan activities and planning commission, so it's not strictly speaking under our IGIS or,
I mean, that's why
and-
this, you know, the nice thing about Microsoft PowerPoint now is they say, would you like us to make this better? So
Yeah.
shows the timeline, you know, the sequence of activities.
John, is your sense that the organization, the member organizations are, that they need that leadership? Which is to say, or could they come together on their own?
I'm asking them each that question. One answer that I've received is yes, but we still need someone to do the legwork
Mhm.
and do the coordination. But I think that they might be able to evolve where there's a chair and then they regulate and run it on their own. That could be an eventual outcome.
Right. It's great that you were able to step in and help them, because I think, sometimes you need a little bit of help to see yourself. So,
Yeah, and I think even putting together this report, people were surprised.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, we really did something in year one.
right, exactly.
And all credit to the Friends of Woods Creek, who really led this initiative and brought in the other partners. I mean, they're the ones, along with Rockbridge Conservation, who have negotiated the MOU between the three institutions, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So, so I think in writing this up, I go back to reminding the conversations we had here about Venn diagrams. So here's the Friends of Woods Creek and all the work on Woods Creek Trail and the creek itself has been led by Friends, as I said, and then different partners come in and add, including, by the way, a significant capital investment by the city through grant funds to upgrade that rain garden. That's in Woods Creek Park. Because right now, the one that's there is not properly sized to do what it's supposed to do for that whole area. So, so I think the focus has allowed other people to, for say, Public Works to go and say, okay, well, maybe we can get grant funds to beef that up. So I think it's showing its value, and I think the next challenge would be to focus on particular areas year by year where you actually show something and not just be a talking shop. Maybe the last point, and I put it in the executive summary, this is not a decision-making body. It's a working group. I think that distinction should be held.
And that's very important, and that helped convince the city to get on board with this, which is what we needed them to. And they really made a big investment in this in terms of their commitment to it. And we wanted to prove to them we're not want to tell you what to do. We don't want to ask for money that you don't have. And I think that's one of the big draws of this. So, yeah. So John, thanks. I said, wow, when I emailed you today. I mean, this is
Better in color, I think.
it's good. It's impressive. All right. Well, thank you, John. All right. So, Arnie, do we have zoning and planning report?
I do not have a zoning and
Okay.
planning report, but I could have mentioned one item under C for what's somewhat related to zoning text amendment.
Yes.
At your next meeting, you will have your first conditional use permit for a detached ADU going into an existing structure.
Oh,
So you will have
Detached.
detached. Yeah.
So we will
Exciting.
be able to implement and review what was approved for accessory dwelling units. So that's what we have on the agenda so far. And only that is the CUP that I just mentioned and what I also mentioned earlier, the continued cottage housing.
Okay, good. Thanks. Unless Leslie left a city council report, no. Okay. Well, I might, I don't know if this is on the agenda, but I thought I just wanted to say, I was thinking I should say something about having been here for 8 years. And I went back and I looked at what I wrote in my application when I applied to be on city council to see what did I think this was. And I said, when I applied, this part I did in English. I've said that they've made me do it in Latin. They made me ask in Latin, but this was in English. I said, I think that serving on the planning commission would be a great way to lend, at least in some small way, a helping hand to the important work of preserving this town as the wonderful hometown I have found it to be. I would also relish the opportunity to learn more about what goes into maintaining and developing a town such as Lexington. I believe this is an exciting time for Lexington as we face many challenges and opportunities. There seems to be a great deal of positive energy at work, and I would like to be involved and contribute in some way. And I think check, 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 and check. And I think all of that, what I was hoping for, and just to see just what John did to bring this together to show us how, and this is a continuation of one of the major things that I came in on. I came in when you were doing the zoning rehaul, and I had no idea that was a big, I thought that was huge. And then we did the comprehensive plan, and this coming out of it's still going on in the way that the city has committed to keeping the comprehensive plan going. And here we are tonight, kind of educating the citizens on what the comprehensive plan is and how important it is and people getting involved. And that was what I wanted to get out of this. I was talking to Ellen about it, and she said, what did you give? And I said, I don't know. Because I saw this as public service, and you always get more than you give, is what I have found. So I would like to thank Arnie and Kate and all those who have filled your position. It's amazing how much I've learned. I came in as a complete pet mayor check, got me to do this, and I had no idea. Literally no idea what this was. And so I leave it, I think, being a more informed citizen. I'm certainly not an expert, but I've enjoyed doing this immensely. I've found it so fascinating. I think, mentioning the city again, they made a big commitment when they realized we have to redo the zoning ordinance and we have to do a comprehensive plan. The city that made a big commitment financially, in terms of human work hours, to do that. And I think the city should appreciate that, because they really did a good job. I think we did a good job. I'm proud of the work we did. That's how Arnie ended up here, right? You came in originally with the Berkeley group, who was brought in to help with that undertaking. And the city said, we need help. We can't do it ourselves. And they did it. And the city stepped up again, I think, with this green infrastructure initiative to do this. And so I think that's something that I've been impressed with. And just tonight, like the past few meetings, there have been no people here, but tonight to see all these people asking questions, what's going on, and nervous. And to the extent that we can make them feel like, no, you're getting a fair shake. This is how it works. It's complicated and kind of boring at times. But I think that's what I've been proud of, whether it's been chickens or whatever. Just getting the process right. And so people feel like they come away like, well, I maybe not agree with the decision, but they're comfortable with how the process went. And that's what I've been proud of, working with you all and the predecessors that have been here. So I'd like to thank you very much. And unless you would like to hear me bloviate more all night long, which I'm willing and able to do, I'm not proud or tired, I would suggest that somebody
Eric,
make
could I add just a few points to your comments, please?
Okay.
Yeah, no, I'll be quick. So so 8 years on the PC, 2 terms as chair, and you've helped to shape the current and future development of Lexington. And here's the list. The updating zoning code, 2017, the comprehensive plan, 2018 to 20, and you chaired during COVID times. By the way, it won an APA award from Virginia, APA Virginia award. Let's not forget backyard chickens. Planned 2019, Arnie helped me today with a list. Planned development mixed use, 2022-23. The Green Infrastructure Initiative Working Group, which we just talked about, same time. I forgot communication. What was it called?
Small cells.
Small cell, which
Yeah.
about drove us all crazy.
Yeah, my signature achievement.
ADUs,
Did all myself.
and then you're going out on cottage housing.
Yeah.
So that's the list. And you always did your homework. So just a little story to tell people. One time when we were looking at General's Retreat, and I said, well, I got to go walk the site and read who's the other person that I bump into? You.
Hmm.
Doing the same thing. And so And then the other thing, as chair, your leadership, your good judgment and humor and Latin made the difference. And just as you said, you created a welcoming space for public engagement. And that was great. So thank you, and we'll miss you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
In a way, the other thing, I think, to thank Arnie, none of these would have happened without Arnie and Kate. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so it's also, in a way, I said to Arnie, this is Pat's legacy, but it's also Arnie's too.
Yeah, I learned, you guys are great. Yeah. Okay,
Enough
lots of small
said.
towns don't have this, as we learned when we went to my training, right? Remember that? It was like, no, we don't have, who are you? Like that. So anyway, all right. Unless you want to sit in amiable silence for the rest of the
Maybe you need to ask for it in Latin.
No, I am
And
on
way
summer
out.
break. No, well, we'll sit here all night. I don't have it. I don't work anything out. I'm gonna make the motion then. I move to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thanks. Ed.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you.